The scream of engines reverberated through the township of New Haven as the Vexalian warship descended from the clouds, its massive hull blocking out the afternoon sun. Commander Leora Keynes gripped her rifle tighter, knuckles whitening beneath her tactical gloves. 5 years since Earth surrendered to the galactic hegemony, and the aliens were still finding new ways to humiliate humanity. "They're coming for another claiming," her Lieutenant Finn muttered beside her. "7th one this month." The ship's landing ramp extended with a pneumatic hiss, disgorging a contingent of towering reptilian soldiers in gleaming obsidian armor. At their center walked General Vraxis Mortak, his scaled skin shimmering iridescent blue under Earth's sun, the infamous conqueror of worlds and newly appointed governor of Earth's northern territories. Leora's throat tightened. She'd seen the broadcasts, Vexalian generals selecting human mates as war prizes, supposedly to foster peace between their species. In reality, it was nothing but a thinly veiled display of dominance, reducing humans to property. "Commander," Finn whispered urgently, "you need to fall back to the bunker now." But it was too late. General Mortak's amber eyes had already locked onto her position at the edge of the crowd, his forked tongue flicking between gleaming fangs. "That one," he declared, pointing directly at Leora, the female warrior with the defiance in her eyes. "She will be my human mate by right of Vexalian conquest law." 2 soldiers immediately broke formation, moving toward her with purposeful strides. Leora's mind raced. Resistance meant death, not just for her, but likely reprisals against the entire settlement. Surrender meant becoming a trophy, a symbol of humanity's defeat. "Commander, don't," Finn began, but Leora had already lowered her weapon. "I accept under protest," she called out, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "As is my right under Article 7 of the Surrender Treaty." A ripple of surprise passed through the alien contingent. Few humans knew the precise terms of the treaty, fewer still dared to invoke them. General Mortak's head tilted, his crest flaring slightly. "Bring her," he commanded, turning back toward his ship. As the soldiers escorted her up the ramp, Leora caught Finn's eye one last time. He nodded imperceptibly, the silent communication of their resistance network. Whatever happened aboard that ship, information would get back to the human underground. The interior of the vessel was a maze of gleaming corridors and strange technology. They led her to what appeared to be private quarters, luxurious by any standard, but clearly designed for a different physiology. "You will remain here until we reach the orbital command station," one soldier informed her. "The general will come for you when he is ready." When they left, Leora immediately began examining her surroundings, looking for anything that might serve as a weapon, a communication device, or means of escape. She found nothing obvious. The Vexalians weren't careless. Hours later, the door slid open to reveal General Mortak. Up close, he was even more imposing, nearly 8 feet tall, his armored body rippling with alien musculature. "Commander Leora Keynes," he said, her name sounding strange in his guttural accent. "Your reputation precedes you. Former Special Forces, leader of the resistance cell in New Haven." Leora kept her expression neutral. "If you knew that, why claim me? Surely there are more compliant humans available." The general's facial ridges shifted in what might have been amusement. "Precisely because you are not compliant. You see, Commander, this arrangement may not be what you think." He stepped closer, and Leora forced herself not to retreat. "The claiming ritual serves a purpose beyond what either of our species understands," he continued. "And you, human, have just become the most dangerous weapon in my arsenal, if you're brave enough to play the role I need." The orbital command station hung like a massive obsidian spider above Earth, its 8 docking arms extending outward. From a central hub, through the viewport in General Mortak's quarters, Leora watched her homeworld turning slowly below, the familiar continents partially obscured by the atmosphere. "You will be presented to the High Command tomorrow," Mortak informed her, his voice rumbling from somewhere behind her. "They expect a broken human, cowed by the honor of being claimed by a Vexalian general. You will give them exactly that." Leora turned from the viewport, eyes narrowing. And why would I play along with this charade? Mortok activated a holographic display with a flick of his clawed hand. Images sprang to life between them. Surveillance footage of resistance meetings, weapons caches, underground bunkers, her people, her operations. Because I have not shared this information with my superiors, he said simply. Yet. Blackmail. Leora spat. How noble of the mighty conqueror of worlds. The general's head tilted, crest flattening slightly. Not blackmail. Insurance. What I am proposing is far more dangerous than you realize. He gestured for her to sit in one of the strangely shaped chairs. After a moment's hesitation, she complied, maintaining a rigid posture. The hegemony portrays the claiming ritual as a means of integrating your species, Mortok continued. But its true purpose is surveillance. Every general who has claimed a human mate reports directly to Archon Zixval. The leader of your empire, Leora said, recalling intelligence briefings. Not an empire, a dominion. There's a crucial difference. Mortok's amber eyes gleamed. The Archon fears humanity's potential. Your species adapts faster than any we've encountered. The claiming ritual keeps your potential leaders isolated, studied, and controlled. Leora leaned forward. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? The hegemony is fracturing from within. Those of us who believe in true galactic federation rather than dominion are positioning for change. His clawed hand closed into a fist. I need someone who can communicate with the human resistance without arousing suspicion. Leora laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe a Vexalian general wants to help humans? Instead of answering, Mortok removed a device from his armor and placed it on the table between them. A small projection appeared, a DNA helix that Leora recognized as human, with strange modifications highlighted in red. Project Genesis, he said gravely, the Archon's final solution for Earth. Engineered pathogens designed to rewrite human genetics, making your species compliant and dependent. Implementation begins in 60 days. Cold dread settled in Leora's stomach. How do I know this isn't elaborate manipulation? You don't. Mortok's facial ridges shifted into what she was beginning to recognize as his version of a grim smile. But as the humans say, the enemy of my enemy. The next day, Leora found herself dressed in Vexalian finery, flowing fabrics designed to emphasize her alien-to-them physiology, a statement piece, a trophy. In the grand audience chamber of the station, dozens of high-ranking Vexalians watched as she was paraded before them, General Mortok's hand gripping her shoulder with carefully calculated possessiveness. General Mortok, purred a female Vexalian whose elaborate crest marked her as someone of importance. Your taste in human specimens is interesting. This one looks like she might bite. The fiercer the prey, the sweeter the taming, Admiral. Nexivora, Mortok replied smoothly. Leora kept her eyes downcast, playing the role of defeated human while silently memorizing faces, names, and the station's layout. If Mortok was telling the truth about Project Genesis, she needed every advantage. Later, as they returned to his quarters, the general spoke quietly. Admiral Nexivora is the Archon's most loyal enforcer. She suspects me already. Then we'd better be convincing, Leora muttered back. 3 weeks into her captivity, Leora had established a routine. Mornings spent in the station's observatory, where she could be seen by all as the general's submissive human companion. Afternoons in training rooms, allegedly being tamed through combat exercises, but actually learning Vexalian fighting techniques from Mortok himself. Evenings poring over data, building a network of information that flowed both ways, to the resistance on Earth, and through Mortok's coalition of dissidents within the hegemony. Your capacity for adaptation continues to impress me, Mortok commented as she perfectly executed a Vexalian disarming maneuver against his combat droid. Most species require generations to master what you've learned in days. Don't sound so surprised, Leora replied, breathing heavily from exertion. It's why your Archon fears us. The general's crest expanded slightly, his expression of agreement. The Archon's fear is not unfounded. Before joining the hegemony, the Vexalian histories tell of another species that adapted quickly. The Crith. They no longer exist. Leora paused, water flask halfway to her lips. Your people eliminated them? Not my people. The Archon's predecessors. Mortak's voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. I was hatched 3 centuries after their extinction, but the Crith are why many of us question the Archon's methods now. History shown through, a cleansing lens becomes propaganda, not lesson. A chime interrupted them, the door signal. Mortak gestured for Leora to assume her claimed mate posture as he called for entry. Admiral Nex Vora slithered into the room, her eyes immediately fixing on Leora with predatory interest. Training. Your pet, General? She asked, circling them both. How dedicated of you. The human provides adequate diversion, Mortak replied dismissively. Was there something you required, Admiral? Nex Vora's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. The Archon has moved forward the timetable for Project Genesis. Implementation will begin in 2 weeks. Your presence is requested at the planning summit. Leora kept her expression neutral despite the cold panic flooding her system. 2 weeks, not 60 days. Billions of lives, the entire future of humanity, compressed into a 14-day countdown. I will attend, of course, Mortak said smoothly. Will my human be permitted? Bring your toy if you wish, Nex Vora said with a dismissive flick of her crest. The Archon finds human reactions amusing. After she departed, Leora exploded into motion, pacing the room. 2 weeks? How are we supposed to? We accelerate our plans, Mortak interrupted, activating security protocols that would block surveillance. The summit brings together all the Archon's loyal generals. It's an opportunity we cannot waste. That night, using components smuggled piece by piece over weeks, they assembled a quantum transmitter. Through it, Leora connected with Finn and the Resistance leadership on Earth, relaying the devastating news about Project Genesis. We need to hit their distribution centers before the pathogens can be deployed. Finn's voice crackled through the secure channel. But even with the intel you've provided, we don't have the firepower. You will, Mortak interjected, leaning toward the transmitter. My coalition controls 16 battlecruisers currently in Earth orbit. When the moment comes, they will be at your disposal. There was a long silence from Earth's end. How do we know this isn't an elaborate trap? Came another Resistance leader's voice. Commander Everett, whom Leora had served under years ago. You don't, Leora admitted. But I've seen the Project Genesis data. If we don't act, humanity as we know it ends in 14 days. More silence, then Finn's voice again. What's the plan? Mortak's amber eyes met Leora's. We give them exactly what they expect, a human pet and her Vexalian master, right until the moment we don't. The Genesis summit was held aboard the Archon's personal vessel, a Leviathan-class warship that dwarfed even the orbital station. As Mortak and Leora were escorted through its cavernous corridors, she counted security checkpoints, noted patrol patterns, and committed to memory every potential exit route. The summit chamber itself was a vast amphitheater filled with Vexalian, military elite. At its center stood a holographic display of Earth, slowly rotating, with thousands of red markers indicating Genesis deployment sites. Archon Zix Val, supreme ruler of the Vexalian hegemony, was even more imposing than the propaganda broadcast suggested. Nearly 12 feet tall with a crest of iridescent spines that shifted colors with his moods, he dominated the chamber by presence alone. General Mortak, the Archon rumbled as they approached. Your reputation grows. I'm told your human integration project yields valuable data. Mortak bowed deeply. The subject has proven educational, exalted one. The Archon's gaze fell upon Leora, multifaceted eyes unblinking. Approach, human. Leora stepped forward, maintaining the submissive posture she'd practiced, while her mind raced through combat scenarios. At this proximity, she could potentially strike a fatal blow, and certainly die in the attempt, probably dooming the resistance plan in the process. Your species fascinates me, the Archon said, extending a clawed finger to tilt her chin upward. Such fragile creatures, yet so resistant to your place in the natural order. Perhaps we simply disagree about what that order should be, Leora replied, unable to completely suppress her defiance. A ripple of shock passed through the assembled generals. The Archon's crest flared momentarily, then settled into an amused configuration. Spirited, he commented to Mortok. You permit this? I find her honesty useful in understanding human psychology, Mortok responded smoothly. Their illusion of freedom makes them more compliant in matters of true importance. The Archon seemed satisfied with this answer and turned to address the assembly. The Genesis plan was laid out in horrifying detail. A 3-phase deployment targeting water supplies, atmospheric release over population centers, and mandatory vaccination programs administered by human collaborators. Leora's hand, instinctively, sought Mortok's, their fingers interlacing briefly, a gesture hidden from the assembly by their positions but one that communicated volumes. This was worse than they'd imagined. As the summit progressed into technical details, Admiral Nexvora approached them during a recess. The Archon requests private audience with your human general, she announced, her tone making it clear this was not a request. Mortok's crest flattened, alarm, though only Leora would recognize it as such. May I inquire as to the purpose? The Archon has questions about human neurological responses that only a specimen can answer. Nexvora's lips curled into a cruel smile. Don't worry, she'll be returned to you, mostly intact. Before Mortok could object further, 4 guards surrounded Leora and escorted her from the chamber. Their planned signal, a specific fleet communication that would alert both the resistance on Earth and Mortok's coalition, was scheduled for 6 hours later. She needed to stall, whatever the Archon wanted. But it wasn't the Archon waiting in the private chamber. It was Admiral Nexvora and a Vexalian she didn't recognize, wearing the insignia of Intelligence Division. Commander Leora Canes. Nexvora began, circling her slowly. Did you truly believe we wouldn't monitor your communications? That we wouldn't notice General Mortok's sudden interest in human resistance patterns? Cold dread spread through Leora's chest. I don't know what you're talking about, I'm just... Spare me your pathetic denials, Nexvora hissed. We've been aware of the General's treasonous coalition for months. We simply needed to identify all the conspirators before striking. The intelligence officer activated a holographic display showing Mortok being surrounded by guards in the summit chamber. Even now, the General is being arrested for treason against the hegemony, Nexvora continued. The Archon has ordered his public execution, after he witnesses the accelerated deployment of Project Genesis, of course. Leora's restraints cut into her wrists as she was forced to kneel before the Archon's throne. The summit chamber had been cleared of all but the most loyal generals, with Mortok held between 2 massive guards, his own hands bound by energy shackles. I must commend your ambition, General, the Archon said, his massive form looming over them both. Few have attempted to subvert my rule so creatively. Using a human as your co-conspirator was an inspired choice. Mortok's crest remained high, defiant despite his captivity. The hegemony was founded on principles of mutual strength through diversity, not subjugation. You've twisted our purpose, Exalted One. Purpose evolves, the Archon replied dismissively. Lesser species serve greater ones, that is the natural order. Leora watched the exchange, mind racing. Their original plan had collapsed, but the resistance on Earth was still expecting the signal. Without it, they would launch a doomed assault against Genesis distribution centers with no support from orbit. You're making the same mistake the Vexalians made with the Crith, she called out, drawing the Archon's attention. You fear what you don't understand, so you destroy it. The Archon's multifaceted eyes narrowed. The human speaks of matters it cannot comprehend. I understand enough. Leora pressed on. Mortok told me about the Crith, how they were eliminated because they adapted too quickly, how your ancestors regretted that genocide for generations. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled generals. The general has shared forbidden histories with a lesser species, the Archon hissed, his crest flaring in anger. Another charge of treason to add to his sentence. Or perhaps, came a new voice from the entrance to the chamber. The general reminds us of truths we have chosen to forget. All heads turned to see an elderly Vexalian enter, leaning on an ornate staff. His scales had faded to pale gray, but his eyes remained sharp. Elder Kazvorn, the Archon acknowledged, with noticeable reluctance. This is a military matter. The Elder Council has no jurisdiction here. When the fate of a species hangs in the balance, all Vexalians have a voice, the Elder replied, moving further into the chamber. As it was written in the founding charter of the hegemony, several of the generals murmured in agreement, their crests shifting in the pattern Leora had come to recognize as conflicted thought. The Elder approached her, studying her face. This human has courage. Reminds me of the Krith emissary I met in my youth, before your predecessor ordered their extinction, a necessary action for hegemony security, the Archon insisted. A shameful atrocity that haunts our collective conscience, the Elder countered. And now you would repeat it? While this exchange unfolded, Leora noticed Mortok's claws working, subtly at his restraints. Their eyes met briefly and she understood he needed time. The difference between humans and the Krith, Leora spoke up again, is that we've already survived extinction attempts. We adapt, we overcome, and we remember who tried to destroy us. As she spoke, she shifted her position slightly, moving, her bound hands behind her back where she could access the hidden lockpick in her sleeve cuff, standard resistance equipment she'd managed to keep concealed. Silence the human, the Archon ordered, but his command lacked its usual authority. The Elder's presence had created doubt. Admiral Nexivora stepped forward eagerly. With pleasure, Exalted One. As Nexivora approached, Leora made her move. The lockpick slid into her restraint mechanism, a quick twist, and her hands were free. Years of combat training took over as she surged upward, driving her forehead into the Admiral's jaw with a sickening crack. Simultaneously, Mortok broke free of his weakened restraints, disarming one guard and using him as a shield against the other. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Some generals moved to protect the Archon, while others, those Leora now realized must be part of Mortok's coalition, drew weapons against their brethren. The signal, Leora shouted to Mortok as she ducked under a guard's swing and delivered a punishing blow to his abdomen. Earth needs to know. The general fought his way to a command console, his claws flying over the controls. Communications are locked down. Elder Kazavorn had withdrawn to the periphery, but now raised his staff. The seemingly ornamental top split open, revealing advanced technology within. Not all systems answer to the Archon, he said, activating the device. Throughout the vessel, alarms began to sound. What have you done? The Archon roared. Initiated the ancient protocol, the Elder replied calmly. Truth before power. Every Vexalian in the fleet will now receive uncensored information about Project Genesis, the Krith genocide, and your other manipulations. Leora had fought her way to Mortok's side, the two of them forming a defensive position. Will that be enough? She asked breathlessly. Among Vexalians, truth is sacred, he replied, his amber eyes gleaming. Once revealed, it cannot be unacknowledged. The chamber doors burst open as more Vexalians poured in, not just military but scientists, administrators, and crew members from throughout the vessel, all with expressions of shock and anger. The tide was turning. 17 days after the failed Genesis summit, Leora stood on the observation deck of the Vexalian flagship Indomitable, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. The ship, once the Archon's personal vessel, now served as headquarters for the Transitional Council, a joint body of Vexalians and humans overseeing the dismantling of the occupation. Contemplating your world's narrow escape? Mortok asked, joining her at the viewport. His formal armor had been replaced with simpler attire, though the general's insignia remained. Contemplating how quickly everything changed, she replied. 3 weeks ago I was your claimed mate, a symbol of human subjugation. Now I'm Earth's representative to the hegemony. Former hegemony, Mortak corrected. The Galactic Federation sounds more appropriate for our new direction. The uprising aboard the Archon's vessel had sparked a chain reaction throughout Vexalian-controlled space. Elder Kazavorn's Truth Protocol had revealed not only the Genesis plan, but centuries of manipulation and suppression by successive Archons. Species that had been portrayed as threats to galactic stability were revealed as victims of engineered conflicts. Resources allegedly shared for the greater good had been hoarded by Vexalian elites. Once the truth was known, the mighty hegemony had begun to fracture along ideological lines. The majority of Vexalians, guided by their cultural reverence for honesty, had sided with the reformers. The Archon and his most devoted followers had retreated to their homeworld, where internal revolution now raged. Admiral Nex Vora's trial begins tomorrow, Leora noted. Will you testify? As will you, Mortak confirmed. The War Crimes Tribunal wishes to establish a complete record. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched distant ships, human and alien alike, moving peacefully through Earth orbit. I've been meaning to ask, Leora said eventually. That first day on Earth when you selected me from the crowd, did you already know who I was? Was I part of your plan from the beginning? Mortak's crest shifted in what she now recognized as amusement. I knew of Commander Leora Keynes, the resistance fighter. I knew you were stationed in that region, but no, the specific moment of selection was what humans might call intuition. You took a tremendous risk, as did you, agreeing to come aboard my vessel. Leora smiled wryly. Not much choice at the time. There is always choice, Mortak countered. You could have attempted to kill me. Many would have. Instead, you listened, evaluated, and adapted. Quintessentially human. The door behind them slid open as Elder Kazavorn entered, accompanied by Finn, now serving as Earth's military liaison. The Federation Charter is ready for your review, Finn announced, handing Leora a data tablet. 17 species have already signaled their intention to ratify, including the Mariath, Elder Kazavorn added. A species we thought extinct for centuries, hiding in the outer systems. They emerged when they heard of the Archon's fall. Leora reviewed the document, a true galactic constitution establishing equal rights and responsibilities for all sentient species, mutual defense pacts, and shared technological development. The culmination of what had begun as a desperate gamble between a human resistance fighter and an alien general with a conscience. There's a diplomatic reception tonight to celebrate the charter, Finn mentioned. As Earth's representative, your presence is expected. Will you be attending, General? Leora asked Mortak. If Earth's representative would consent to be escorted by a Vexalian, he replied formally, though his eyes carried a warmth visible only to her. I believe that can be arranged, she said. Though I should warn you, this time I lead. Mortak's crest extended fully, his expression of joy. I would expect nothing less from the human who fought back. Later that evening, as representatives from across the galaxy mingled and celebrated the birth of their new federation, many noted the unusual pair at the center of it all. The human warrior and the alien general who had found common ground not through subjugation, but through respect. Their unlikely alliance had not only saved humanity, but had transformed the galaxy itself. As the celebration reached its peak, Elder Kazavorn offered a toast that would be recorded in the annals of multiple civilizations. To the wisdom of seeing strength in difference, rather than threat. And to the courage of those who fight not just for their own kind, but for justice that transcends species. Leora raised her glass, her fingers briefly intertwining with Mortak's. No longer a gesture hidden from others, but a symbol of what was possible when ancient enemies became allies. The alien general had demanded a human mate by law, never expecting her to fight back. But in her resistance, he had found something far more valuable than compliance. A partner in forging a new future for all their worlds. The end.